Hey folks, Mark here. I was just thinking this morning about some of the different options and changes I've made to my FME from the defaults from when I install it to when I start using it. And so I thought, well, wouldn't it be a great idea if I just installed FME on a clean machine, opened up some of the options, and showed you where I change things from the defaults and why I do that, and then maybe you can have your own routine set up for when you do something like that as well. So let's dive into FME and we'll see some of the options in here. So this is brand new. This is the first time I've started FME on this machine. It's just been installed. I'm going to click Tools FME Options and look through some of the options here. Enable Quick Connect and automatically connect after Quick Add. Those basically relate to putting transformers together on the canvas. And I always leave things like that as the default because really I like to use that functionality. I think we put them in there because we were worried if somebody didn't like the functionality they could turn it off. But really that functionality now is pretty much mainstream, so I don't worry too much about that. The first one on this list I change is this one: canvas selection must fully contain objects. What does that mean? Well, it means, for example, if I have just a couple of transformers like this, if I want to select them both, I have to select a box around them. I can't just select a small box that covers part of them. And I like doing that, so that's one of the first things I change when I install FME. I turn off that option there and say canvas selection doesn't have to fully contain objects. And now I can select everything on there just by that short, small sort of drag, rather than having to envelope all of them at once in full. So that's the first thing I normally do. Let's see, number of workspaces, it's from 10 to 15. Let's just increase it to 15 because why not? Let's see, inspect with data inspector when visual preview closed. I think that's a personal thing. That's not something I necessarily worry about. I don't generally turn these on by default. Transformer options, yeah, I like to see the transformer version. When I sort of hover over it and get a tooltip, I like to see the version. I do like to see if it's a linked transformer. I like to know the file name, like where I'm looking at it from. So I don't have any of those in here right now, but just to show you, it should show me, there you go, version 4. So that's the version number, and the linked transformer it would show me that in the tooltip as well. And those are things I personally like to see. Let's see. Yeah, use the advanced text editor and the string concatenator. Why not? Because I think it's probably better if you're experienced. If you're new, we've got the basic editor by default, but I like to see the advanced one being hopefully a bit of more advanced user. Text editor option, I'm pretty much okay with leaving that like that, I think. Let's see. Better save those. Translation, priority, no, blah, 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 that's okay. I normally increase the font of my log window. You could say it's perhaps because I'm getting a bit older, but also because I do a lot of presentations online, and I find it really difficult to present to someone and show them what's in the log if the log is at its default font size. So that's what I do there. And I always turn on log timestamp information. That shows you the timestamp in the log window. I think it always gets logged to the log file anyway, but if you want to see it in the window, you need to check that box. So that's another one that I set by default. The log message filter, again, I wouldn't worry about that. Log debug, I don't turn on and don't recommend you turn on unless there is something specific that you're trying to debug. HTTP calls and reading XML and that sort of thing. That's when that can be really useful in particular. So let's apply that. Workspace defaults. Yeah, I generally don't change anything in here. The stroke tolerance and things like that. Those, yeah, I just leave as defaults. Appearance, you might prefer the dark mode. I'm just using the light again because I take a lot of screenshots, and screenshots just, they're better. They work better in the light color. Let's see. The default transformer size it to text, and include attributes. So what that means is if I put a transformer down and it's got attributes on and I resize it, it should resize to the size of the attribute. Let's see if it does that on the new one. Yeah, see, that's a bit longer, and I think it's because it's resized it. There you go. Now if I double click, it resizes to fit the attributes in. Whereas if I didn't have that setting set and I double clicked it, it would just resize to the transformer name. So that's something else I like to see. Curved, yeah, I like curved connections. You might not. That's up to you. There is a shortcut key, but I can't remember what it is now. So you'll have to look that up if you like to switch it in the workspace itself. I always have fill bookmark background checked. It didn't used to be checked by default. We changed that. I'm really grateful for that. The palette of bookmark colors, I find that's okay, but I did on my other machine and on the FME hub, there is a transformer there that will download you a whole bunch of new transformer bookmark colors that you can apply. Matching closing bookmark color for annotation, yep, that's good. I just generally leave those like that. Connection styles, yeah, defaults are fine like that. Actually, I saw someone in a project recently have tunnel entrances and exits set to a particular color. So I just say actually the sort of slightly bluish color, regular thickness, and dashed, and that actually looks quite nice. If you put a tunnel in here, it won't apply it automatically, but then you can go and change that, and to me that sort of almost looks like a tunnel like on a map. So that's why I'm thinking, oh yeah, that was a pretty good idea. So yeah, I think from now on I'm going to start creating that by default as a special connection style. Let's see, what else have we got? Connection styles, advanced options. I think I don't need to touch these because they're just in case I have a problem with a high DPI display monitor, which I don't. So and I think that's pretty much all I do in here. Like, we'll come back to toolbar in a moment. Like, the help's already set up. I don't need a proxy. Coordinate systems I'm not worried about. Oh yeah, there is the thing about web connections. I don't know if you're aware of this. Let me just bring over FME from another machine. If I look up database connections, I've got a few here. I think I can right click on those and export them and then import them on the new computer. Same thing with web connections. I can export everything I've got and import it onto the new machine. You just right click, select them and right click, and there's export. And the same thing applies on here. You can just right click and import, and I think it's some sort of XML or JSON file, probably XML. There we go. So yeah, I mean, if you've got connections you want to bring across, you can export and import them like that. Background maps, yeah, normally I'd set up at least a basic background map like the Stamen maps, which is pretty much free of charge, I think. In fact, I know pretty much about it. I think it is. So there we go. So I've got that now in my visual preview, and that's pretty much my options. The other thing I do is change the menu bar up a bit. Toolbar, sorry, not the menu bar. So some of the things on here I don't really use, and some of them I use quite a bit. So for run, I like to have rerun entire workspace in there because it gives me the opportunity to rerun with just a click rather than having to click on the down arrow on run and pick it from there. So that's something I do there. And I also turn on the, or bring up on there, the prompt option, enable feature caching, and just for the sake of it, breakpoints as well, because I use that sometimes. Oops, I wanted the other side of that. There we go. The other thing I turn on sometimes is enable disable feature count display. The only reason I really do that is because if I'm taking screenshots, sometimes I want to turn it off. So really that's just something I do. But you may or may not be worried about that. Let's see. The other things I add, I do add these. Can I add them all at once? No, I've got to add them one at a time. But I do normally add these options for aligning my transformers or lining them up in the middle or spreading them apart or whatever. I find those really quite useful. So I do bring those up onto the toolbar as well. View. Yeah, I don't think I do much there. In fact, one of the things I'd probably do is on the insert. There's no insert options there, but normally I wouldn't need add transformer. I saw someone mention this on Twitter and I thought, wow, why would I actually need that? So I'm just dragged off the add transformer option on there. Let's see, what else have we got? Probably not. Oh, there you go, transformers, that's where it was. Yeah, definitely don't need that. Probably wouldn't use those unless I was really using custom transformers a lot. Tools, I wouldn't worry that one because you can get at that now from the visual preview window. And windows. Now you can start adding options to toggle windows on and off. This is in 2020, so I'd probably do that. I could put a separator in at the end and then start putting in the windows that I use just so I can toggle them on and off much more easily. Like the transformer gallery, for example, I use that occasionally but not all of the time, so that's why I might have it there so I can turn it off and on a bit more quickly. And the help window and all of those. So those are just some of the things I do in terms of the toolbar. And I think that's pretty much it. So these are all the FME options. Those are the ones I change personally. Again, these are just my reasons for doing that, but I think they're good reasons. I think the defaults in some cases are, well, I don't know. I prefer... I guess for a beginner they're good. For an advanced user, you can take some shortcuts, and that's what I'm basically showing here. The defaults I turn off to show those shortcuts, and I think that's pretty much it. So at this point, I'm happy to start using FME, and I can start turning these windows on and off like that, and start lining things up, and I can turn off caching and prompting and whatever, and I can hit the rerun button, and everyone's happy. And the font's a little bit bigger so you can see that online. Maybe that was a little bit too big, but you get the point. So yeah, I think they're pretty much all my default settings that I change in the new FME. So yeah, well, I hope that was useful for you, and any questions, please do get in touch on our community or via our support team or anything like that. We're happy to help. So, goodbye.